All right, so now that we have Jean, I feel like we can jump back in and we knew you guys were trying to get in, so we wanted to wait for you.
Thank you.
So I think I talked with Jim after our meeting last time to just explain to him what we were trying to do, and hopefully he and Terry are able to give us some relatively good news, because I think in your note it sounded pretty good, Jim.
Yeah, I spent a day working on after I got reinstalled with Camp RS on my computer. What I did was I took the length of the road and what today's cost would be per linear foot for just materials to construct that road. And then Caitlin helped me write a formula using the pavement condition index to give it a depreciation value that kind of like where would it be with these where would it be today? So I had two columns of what it would cost and one column of, I'll call it depreciation because I don't know what else to call it, of today's, after doing the inventory of the roads. I don't know if I can share that with you guys or not. It's on, can I do that? Can I do that from here or not?
I think so.
I don't know how.
Whoever, Sam, can you enable him to share?
I'm sorry, what's that?
It is. He's able to share.
Okay. So if I go to
Go down the bottom to share screen.
okay, hang on a second, guys. Let me somehow there we go. Share. Oh, there it is. Boom. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the road name, the length of the road, and what it would cost per linear foot to construct that road today with just materials. This is the pavement condition index.
Sorry, it's the house number where that deer was on Hickox Road. They can't read the fence.
Shouldn't less than 21, I told them. I put that on the fax.
They couldn't read it.
Really?
It didn't go through.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is the pavement condition index. And this is after using this number here into this number, we get this number. And I wish I could show you the formula. But that's what I came up with, quick and dirty, to get a number together for the auditor. Is it perfect? Probably not, but at least to start.
So Jim, is that what how much it depreciated or how much that road is worth?
That would be,
Worth?
in my opinion, what the road is worth. Once you take away the score would be 100, Kathy, typically.
Mhm.
For a new road.
Reviewing it, this is the score it's given. So the lower the score, the more it costs to fix the road.
So do they want labor costs included as well?
Don't know, Linda. I was just
So yes, we do need to include the total value. I don't think in terms of like the reconstruction, but the total value. But Kate, this has all got to go into the fixed asset. So can you talk us through, because when we do an improvement, then we record that separately to the road. Can you explain that?
So it's timely because we actually just had that auditor training yesterday that talked about capital assets. And they specifically stated that your capital asset worth should not include exterior things like maintenance or labor or that kind of thing. Your capital asset should be only the value of the asset. So if we do labor to work on the road, it should not include that. It should only include like the amount we put in the 5110.
So labor isn't included. So it's just the materials that would go in?
Correct.
Even for the very first time we make it?
It seems crazy.
Well,
That's
I mean, for the
like
very
that
first
one.
time that it's unusual to be creating it for the very first time.
Right.
So I think what I would say is if we make a decision together to come up with a figure, we can choose what we include in that figure to get us started. And then going forward, like next year, if we spend 5 hours on a road, we're not gonna include that 5 hours in the value of that road. But I think to start, it really seems up to us. It's kind of just putting a pin in a place to start from. So I mean, I really think it's up to us what we include to start, but going forward, it was pretty clear yesterday that we shouldn't be including the cost it makes to maintain the road in the capital asset.
What do other places do?
We're light years ahead.
Yeah, we're like, so many places do so many different things. Jim, where, the value that you're placing for the, like, for instance, this first one, Acorn Hill, you have it valued at 443,520. Can you walk us through? Because I think one of the things, getting back to what Kate said, if we update our fixed asset policy to determine how it is that we're going to come about this, then that's what we show the auditors. Okay, here's the value that we're placing on because this is our policy. So back up for a second, kind of where you started.
What I started with was I took our our design standards for a road. So 15 inches of stone, tile, fabric, asphalt, and depending if they had gutters or not. So I know the formula doesn't show up, but like I'll use Second Point Road, those have concrete gutters and catch basins. So that was $110 a linear foot. If a road has concrete gutters and catch basins, it was $200 a linear foot. So I just took materials, today's cost of materials, Doug, and came up with a linear foot cost and multiply it by the linear feet, or here it's by miles. That would come up with the answer.
So for this one, you're estimating what, $100,000 approximate? Well, no, it's not quite 44.
So if you were to rebuild like Acorn Hill today, be 443,000.
Right, that would be building it to our current standard, so.
Correct.
So the thing that this seems great because you can really tell what's happening here. The thing that, in terms of what we're trying to do right now is to try to get it to a value of what they are. And so Acorn Hill is the perfect example. It's today, I don't think it is at our current standards, is it?
No, it's not.
No,
And do we have, so maybe what we need in the formula is one more thing that says, you know, here's what it would be to current standards. And maybe we need an A, B, and C quality level where it's like, it was at current standards, so we can use the percentage of age, meaning the pavement. And then it wasn't at, or it's like a dirt road, so unimproved that it's certainly not worth the same as a non-dirt road. You know, and Acorn Hill, it might be two sections where the one section that the Morel people put in hopefully is better than the section that never got addressed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is, I feel like this is a really great start, but Acorn Hill is a perfect example of something that doesn't feel worth as much as some of the nice roads that we've made.
Correct. So whatever we think we do to better define what we're trying to explain,
Right.
as Doug said, like, I'll say a policy, then we can fine tune this.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a real good start.
I'm just trying to get us going in the right direction with some numbers that I came up with.
And Kate, the part that baffles me and I feel strange is, so the very first time we made this road, according to the training you took yesterday, you don't think they wanted us to include labor?
No, they talked about it like a building too. Like if you build a building.
We include labor there.
yeah, you include that.
So that's why I feel like it's
Right, but
from every other thing we built.
right. So what they were talking about was improvements on your assets. So
Oh, so they weren't
Typically-
talking about establishing the.
Yeah, typically you're not establishing assets once they're already created. That's not typically, what we're doing is very different than anyone else. And that's really why the auditors are having a hard time giving us an opinion, because we're trying to do something to make our assets better than they've ever been before. And that's not a usual occurrence. So what they were saying was in improvements, when you have a building and you add a security system, you add the cost of the security system, not the cost of paying someone to install it.
Yeah, but when you build a building, the first time, the labor and anything else associated with it is in the value of that building.
Right, I think
So, I
she's
mean-
just talking about improvements.
Yeah,
I think that's the difference. And this maybe though, because Jim is using it as the, with the pavement condition index, Jim's trying to get to, I think, what it would have cost at today's standards for the first time we built the road, because we don't have it listed from earlier. Right? So do we think we should be, wonder if we should touch base either with the auditors or somebody else who's done it to find out how they establish their beginning balance for any asset.
Well, we can certainly touch base with the folks at the comptroller's office from the training that we did yesterday and just verify. But, you know, I think I go back to this, the numbers for the material. I wonder if it wouldn't be honestly simpler. So Jim's got the total length of road and he's got the pavement condition index, and maybe it's based on the materials here is maybe it's how you're figuring your number here, Jim. But I wonder if we say, okay, a road is worth X number of dollars per mile. We know, for instance, on what you're showing here, Yerkes to New Michigan is 2.68 and it's got a condition index of 91. We just have to have something for, we have to have a policy, and then for basically justification on how we came up with the value of the item here. And it's going to be the same, honestly, for water lines and everything else.
I was glad you brought that up because I know it hasn't been discussed about the water.
Doug, I think,
This is for-
Doug, I was like, what the water means. So,
Oh, because yeah, we have to do it for our other assets too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything has to be.
And lighting
Yeah, I think-
districts.
Kathy just shared the guide. Kate and I just spent 2 days going through our training with the comptroller's office, and they talked in depth about capital assets.
Okay, yeah, the only thing I thought it's perfect timing. The only thing I found was odd was them talking about excluding labor. And it feels like for the, it's the opposite of buildings and everything else, where we do include, if we work on something, we include that labor.
so let me, Doug and Kate, typically when some of our work is done by outside companies like surface. So once we figure this out going forward, do we then only put the cost of materials on that road, not including the labor for repairs? I'll use Soup Coat, for example. Let's say it costs $1,000 to do a road, but 500 is labor. We only do just show what the materials are.
See, I think when you pay an outside vendor, it's the full cost of it. But when you use your own internal labor, maybe that's where the difference is. Does that ring true from the training or no?
Well, as Kate was saying, like with the security example, I mean, I think that one's a little different than, for instance, a road, because a road's not going to lay itself down. So, there is the aspect, and we'll dig into that a little bit more, but there is the aspect of the actual labor to do that. Kate, when you're recording the improvements, like I know you've recorded improvements, I think on some of our roads in the last 2 years, I think you've used the full cost, right? Like for instance, in that example from a contractor.
I haven't even used actual cost. I've used the estimate from the 284 agreement
Why would you not use the actual?
because we don't have it. Because when we use stone from stock, there's no way to say how much that stone cost.
Okay, that's a good answer. I just couldn't figure out. So yeah, if we're doing things ourselves, we we have estimates for all of those little bits and pieces that we don't really collect somewhere.
But you know, honestly, if that's what our policy was, that we were going to place the value of the improvement based on the 284 agreement, again, that's the justification that the auditors are looking for.
Right, and when you do that, are you relieving the expense for stone and putting it over to there? Do you know what I'm saying? So when we say you have the estimate and you have stone there, we've paid for that stone under expense. Now it's being put into an asset. Are we relieving the expense?
No,
No, it's still the
Still an
general
expense.
highway fund.
Not to belittle this exercise at all, but this could very quickly descend into the weeds and become more complicated than probably what the auditors are really looking for. I mean, whether the labor is in there or not, you could argue that point. This gives us an idea of what these roads cost us. And these people are looking, from what you said to me, Doug, they're looking for a methodology, a protocol that we follow so that it's not just grabbing a number out of the air, which is what was done previously by EFPR. So this is a very logical way to do it. You know, we have the road condition from the program Jim uses that can be updated every year so that you can show a current value. You just go through this exercise once a year and it goes up, it goes down, whether we install a new road or we improve the, the score of that road, the number becomes what the number becomes.
Yeah, I think it definitely seems like a well thought out spreadsheet. I feel like so long as we have the right elements, the auditors will be fine. So checking in with the comptroller's office to see if this is missing anything might be a great step, because my point to Jim was we really want to have something. The auditors can throw all of the rocks at it if they want, and they can help us fix it because they're experts at this and they see across many municipalities. So we should get to where we think we've got a fairly good product and then let them take their shots at it. At least
So the only thing is, this is a start, but this spreadsheet is not acceptable. It's got to go over into our fixed assets in our accounting system, and it's got to be recorded and tracked that way. So Kate, technically the town clerk's office is the one responsible for entering that, but then what we do is we audit that. But Kate, how do you feel we could take this information and then put it over in the other system?
I mean, I think if we took something like this where we have a column P that says this is at this point in time what we estimate the historical cost of this road to be, then from there capital assets and Encode is going to do the depreciation for us. I don't think it's appropriate to go back and forth between a spreadsheet that's valuing the quality of the road, because that's going to throw off depreciation calculations in Encode.
Right.
It's depreciating based on a useful life. So perhaps the useful life is where we can add the piece of saying whether or not this was actually done to our standards. So for example, a road done to our standards, Middle Cheshire Road, it's beautiful. Jim has done so much work on it. It works. So that road is going to have a longer useful life than Acorn Hill, which wasn't built to our standards and is going to depreciate faster. And that's how we can accomplish that, is by giving it a different useful life. And if we can justify what the useful life, so I would say 2 columns. One would be what's the actual cost right now and what's the estimated useful life based on the condition of the road. And if we can plug those 2 things in, then going forward, we'll use a consistent useful life for improvement. So chip sealing is 2 years, but micro paving is 5 and rebuilding is 50. So if we can be consistent with the improvements, because every improvement can add to the useful life of the asset. I think rather than going back and forth between a spreadsheet trying to calculate depreciation outside of the system, is going to cause us issues going forward. I think we can use the useful life and the improvements done to the road and use those consistently to get us to a place where we can just roll each year.
So Kate, to your examples, what you don't here is, or are other things that you can pick and choose, like
No.
what you want to do, and it will spell out 2 years, 5 years, 4 years, 7.
That would be our policy, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And the comptroller does have that. That exists. I have been using that when we've been rebuilding fixed assets. So there is a standard list of useful life for improvements and assets and pretty much anything we can do to the road. So if we can say, hey, we're going to adopt this guide as our standard, and then anytime we do something, we just go to that guide and use that as the useful life. And then the cost of it could be an estimate as actual as we can get it, I would say,
Maybe
for that improvement.
do you have to put then to be able to do that correctly and establish like what is the value and what has already been depreciated? Would you need to know an approximate year that the thing was put in service? So say this road needs to be completely done in 5 years, or some of them were just redone. Do you know what I'm saying? So, or maybe it's remaining useful life.
Yeah, exactly. I think we don't necessarily need to know when it was created, but what's remaining.
Yeah.
And we can enter what's remaining into the system, and that's going to determine how quickly,
Right, how much it was depreciated already.
Exactly.
Think about it in terms of our audit. Our audit was just completed through 12/31/19. So we sort of need a value in the system for what the value of the assets are for 1/1/20.
But I think that Kate's way of doing it, where you say, what's the useful life remaining on the asset? We can use Jim's approximation of what the asset would have cost at the beginning. The difference, the system would show, hey, there's only 5 years left. The rest of it must be at depreciation because this asset has a life of 30 years. It only has 5 left. It means 25 years of the value is in depreciation already.
Well, yes, we can do that, and the system will actually depreciate it for us. The system calculates that. The system is very smart. The thing is that the spreadsheet doesn't tell us is like Acorn Hill. We know it wasn't built to our standards. So we actually need to know what the value of Acorn Hill is on 1/1/20. Do you understand my point? Because the materials that you're showing here, we know that Acorn Hill isn't really worth that.
Right.
Right.
Right, but the one way to get there, I was thinking was, if we say Acorn Hill has a 3-year remaining life and it's a road, so it should have a 50-year life. It'll take the 300,000 and say 3 out of 50 is all that's left, and figure that the rest of it's already gone to depreciation. Acorn's a weird one because it's not really at the standard, so you could argue maybe that value, the condition value, should be lower. Because it just wasn't built right in the first place.
No, usually this is really just to satisfy the audit so that we have an asset value assigned to roads, water lines, whatever's. This is not going to be used as a guide for what we do with our roads, because there's no way that we're ever going to, well, I doubt that there's any way in the future that we're ever going to totally fix Acorn Hill Road using this as an example.
Right.
And we're not going to pump, the estimate is what, $2 million to fix the whole thing, moving services and everything.
Yeah.
So this can't be used as in the same manner that Jim uses that Cornell guide where these, all these percentages come from.
Yeah, I don't think that this would be used. It's just like the accounting records, and we don't really use accounting records to make decisions. So.
This really is used for the audit, and it's used for bonding. Those are the two, because we're bonding against the total assets of the town, and that comes directly from the audit. So that's where this is used. So it shouldn't be used for deciding on what's getting worked on.
Right. How much of an impact does this actually have on the rate that we get on for, a bond? Is it a difference of 1% in what we have to pay? Is it 0.1%?
It goes to really our credit rating, basically our bond rating. And, that's one of my concerns with the audit that was just completed. Yep. They disclaimed our capital assets. And so I don't know what that's going to do with return to our bond rating. when we next go out the bond. I'll be able to let you know in 6 months, Terry.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know
these auditors must audit other towns too. What procedures do other towns use? Can they tell us what other people use?
That's what I was just gonna say. I know, Kate, you said we're way above everybody else, but the auditors tell us that everybody's doing it.
And we're
I
not.
reinvent the wheel and just find out what our surrounding
The
towns are doing.
auditors are telling us that they can't make an opinion on what we've presented to them this year because of our situation of
Right.
changing the value.
Yeah.
They never said everyone else is doing it. And
That's what
frankly,
he said, that
yesterday-
That's
other
not-
towns do it.
That's
Yeah.
not the question I asked, though. I asked the question, ask the auditors, what do other towns do?
Yeah, when Jim and I were talking, we talked about the auditors, in their quote for their services, they presented us with some towns that they work with. And I thought was one of the ways we could get at what's acceptable is to talk to those other towns, like, how did you do this? But it might not be necessarily the highway people who did it. It could have been the accountants who did it. They could have done it a couple of years ago. They may not remember. I think the key thing is for us to get an asset value that we can stand behind and that the auditors can, give us an opinion on, because that qualified opinion that we got, or the opinion with the, concern that they raise, doesn't look good. It won't look good in the paper. It won't look good anywhere. You know what I mean? It's not, we need to fix it.
Well,
I think what you need,
Go
what
ahead.
you need to do is to develop a formula to determine these values. And before you go ahead and calculate values for all your assets, run that formula by the auditors and say, this is what we'd like to do, or this is what we came up with. Do you agree with this? If they agree with it, then go ahead and do it. Don't do all kinds of work and then have them say, well, wait a minute, this, you didn't do this correctly.
Sounds good.
I put a paragraph in the chat box that I pulled directly from the link Kathy just sent us. It says from the historical cost and how to estimate it, asset valuation. And it gives us 3 options from the comptroller's suggestion for valuing historical assets.
That was what I tried to screenshot. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's in the appendix.
And so I think Jim is doing something similar to the third one, whereas deflate the current cost of the asset. So he's got more or less the current material cost of the asset and trying to deflate it down. I think one thing that when Kate brought up that I feel like needs to be impacted is the remaining useful life, that we do have an idea, because it's probably mentally in our capital plan, but maybe not to the stage where every single road is, but we do know which roads are the roads that are gonna need work and which ones, look good for at least a couple of years until they need coating or something. But so that might be the third way, was the way that we're on that path. Doesn't it seem like that, Kate?
Yeah, I agree.
I like Joe's idea of kind of maybe putting the useful life stuff into this same spreadsheet and then running it by the auditors and giving them a chance to throw up on it or give us other advice on what we may or may not be missing, because it will save us a lot of adjustments later if we can get a methodology.
Or we could reach out to the state and speak to their
I
accountants.
think that was Doug's thought. Was first he mentioned that they would talk to the comptroller's office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah,
ones who are
Milano.
ultimately.
And
They're
Milano from the comptroller's office is the local guy, and that's no problem. The one thing, like for instance, just looking at the spreadsheet, I can tell you just off the bat. So I think the depreciated value that Jim is suggesting here is about 43 million. I think our capital assets currently are 52 million. Now I know this doesn't include water, but if we show, okay, our assets are $10 million under what we currently value, we have to have a pretty good explanation for that, because they
But this
will.
doesn't include buildings. This is just roads.
I understand that. And it doesn't also include all the water lines and everything else that's in there. But
Yes,
I'm
I
just
think
telling
we're
you,
gonna
we have
get
to
higher.
document
Yeah.
why the difference is. So
Yeah. The risk is I feel like we'll be higher once we add in all
It's
that.
possible.
The 52 million is based on actually only water improvements. I actually have Bob's old spreadsheets, and I can see where they valued our infrastructure previously, and roads weren't even included. Remember, he used to say to Doug, your roads should be filled with potholes and unable to be driven because of how low we were valuing them based on his spreadsheet.
So the
So that
current,
did include
what's represented now is our asset value doesn't include roads?
Correct.
Right.
That's part of the reason why the auditors are super uncomfortable with what we have. And
Well, I
want
thought somebody said that roads were in this number. You know, whatever the number is, I don't even know what the number is, but
Well, by Bob saying that they should be full of potholes, I think he's implying that they're in there at such a low level as to be unrealistic because they would have had nothing done to them. And so it's really just about getting our accounting to catch up to the work that Jim's already done.
well,
It's-
yeah, but somebody told me in the past week or so that we had a number for roads. Now we're saying we don't.
Well, we have a number for capital assets, but Kate, you're saying that does not include the roads in that capital asset
Correct.
number?
Correct. Yeah, that spreadsheet from EFPR, I think it dates to 2017 was the last time that he did depreciation. It was the one I had to use to calculate depreciation manually the year that we didn't have Encode set up yet. I think that was 17 to 18.
Yep.
And in that infrastructure tab, it was solely water lines, and there was no value to roads in that estimate.
So what do we represent our capital assets to be right now, Kate?
We currently do not have a number for, and that's why the auditors didn't give us an opinion.
Well, wait a minute.
For
wait a minute,
anything?
Wait a
There
minute.
has
Wait a
to be
minute.
a
The
Oh, you
audit,
did.
the audit that was just completed had the $52 million number in it with capital
Okay,
assets, but they discounted it.
Because it isn't in the system.
Right, but that's actually the number. What does the Tyler Technologies program fixed asset say? Do you have that number? Can you pull that up for us?
I can pull it up, but it's not accurate because I put in like the 284 agreement updates over the last couple, like I've tried to keep up to date so that when we got to this point, I would already have the improvements we did this year in the system. So it's let me pull it up.
And the other thing in the audit, the 52 million, I don't think it quantifies the difference between what Kate was talking about in terms of roads or water or anything else. They're just overall documenting the 52 million as a group for capital assets. But, they look at the line item details, but actually in their audit report, it just lumps it all together as the 52 million.
What do the insurance people say?
Well, that's different. So the insurance, we actually have an industrial appraisal. I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, but we do have those numbers, Terry.
Sounds like sounds like the auditors really opened big backs here, we don't really know.
To get back to your point though, Terry, I don't really think we need to get lost in the weeds. We keep saying what other municipalities do. A lot of municipalities just say, okay, a road is worth $1 million a mile. That's our policy, right? And that's the number they plug in. You just have to have some sort of justification of whatever it is on how you're valuing the stuff. I'm not saying that's right. We just need to come up with, okay, how are we going to do it?
Yeah, but if other communities just say it's $1 million a mile,
whatever the number
you're
is.
implying that somebody finds that acceptable, somebody being auditors.
It's more than just them saying it's $1 million a mile. It's saying it's $1 million a mile. Its useful life is X. It's this age. So much of it is in depreciation. So much of it is still on our books. And so that's the starting point, is the $1 million a mile. But then there's a few more little complexities to get to what is our book value today.
And why it's $1 million a month. So where you came up with that, I think, is part of it. And then to be consistent across the board.
Well, yes, but Doug is implying that some people just say it's $1 million a mile and let it go at that. That's what he just said.
No, they can't get an audit opinion without having the depreciation and everything else. I
So
think,
Well, I'm
Terry,
just hearing different things, I guess.
no, to your point though, everybody's saying on the same page. There's a starting point, and I think the number is $1 million, but whatever the number is, it's just hypothetically say here it's $1 million a mile. There's the starting point, but then most there's some municipalities that still use Excel spreadsheets. We were talking about that yesterday, but most everybody has some sort of a system that tracks this. Like, so for instance, our system will depreciate it, and then we need to plug in the useful life. So you have your starting point, and then you have the rest of the formula that calculates it. Whether or not we have to manually calculate it or the system automatically does it for us, whichever the case.
Does it
Yes.
ever depreciate to zero?
yes,
Yeah.
it could.
I don't, we have a road, let's pick on Acorn Hill again. I'd say that's probably beyond its useful life, but people are still using it, so therefore it does have useful life left in it.
It does, but for your book value, your accounting book value, you have a zero value because you've already taken all the depreciation. So that's all that means. It isn't saying you can't use it, and it isn't saying it needs repair. It's the accounting for it. And accounting for capital assets is something that's a little bit than figuring out what you guys are figuring out. But I feel like why we all needed to work together on this is because we need to understand what methodology to use to value the roads. And Jim's done a fine job here of saying, hey,
Yeah.
The methodology that you'd value a perfect road done today is this. Now we have to use some factors to get to the book value as we put them on the books today. And so that might be more of an accounting exercise than a public works exercise. I feel like, but we had to work together to at least get to this point where they're all listed. They're all, there's a condition and an expected repair date. So we can say, you wouldn't repair something that's still good. You might update it. So, things could be at zero and things could have a lot of value when you make a repair. Accounting values aren't indicative of what you do.
Well, it's like,
Yeah, I know. When I was working in industry, the accountants always got in my way too when I was trying to perfect the line. So
Here we are again. Welcome to
think of it a little bit simpler example, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, for instance, we have an asset value for the town hall. When we put the new HVAC systems in, we didn't say, okay, the value for the town hall has significantly increased. We showed the improvements to the town hall, correct, Kate? Isn't that what we did?
Yeah, we added the improvement, and then the cost of the improvement does get added in to the total net of the asset, but then we have the ability to give that improvement a useful life. And if that improvement's useful life is only 2 years, that full addition of asset value is going to be gone in 2 years. So that's where we can use that life, that valuable life, to give us a little bit more control over how things are being depreciated. And I really do think that's the key for some of these roads, rather than trying to come up with a value that maybe needed to be analyzed again each year. We could use that useful life and say, we determine this useful life on 1/1/20 based on the condition of this road at that point in time, and then have a standard useful life for the improvements we do going forward.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's what the auditors are looking for, is a well thought out methodology for establishing. And until we get these numbers, we might be close to what's on our books. We might not, because we definitely have, over the time, from the time we built the road to now, whether we booked it or not, experienced depreciation on those roads. So every road that we built has a big age. And that means a lot of it's already in depreciation.
well, that's reflected in this PCI column that Jim has.
It is, but it may not be fully, given everything there. I think this is a pavement index, and it might be more about a rebuild. You know what I mean? There might be like a little bit of a twist needed, but I think that's
It's as good an indicator to me as we have. So
right.
it tells you the condition of the road based on Jim's observations, and
Yeah,
that's as good an indicator as any, I would think. That
Yeah, the only reason I think that maybe there's another one level more refinement is the situation with Acorn Hill already leaps out at us as it's not a road that's very good. So how do we add one more column that gets it down to where that's either fully depreciated, like you said, Terry, people are still driving on it, but we've gotten all the value out, or you know what I mean? That's a detail.
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, Acorn Hill, I would, having a score of 85 seems a little bit high to me anyways.
This is not necessarily the correct number, Terry. I just pulled that column over to show, how we could come up with depreciation.
Oh, perfect, good. So we could tweak that column.
Somehow, but I was gonna do that, but somehow Jim screwed up the formula already this morning when I was doing this, so can't show you that.
Okay.
So the number 85,
No, it's more like
Right.
90.
35.
so how 85 isn't believable? Are the other numbers believable?
Yeah, these numbers are, Terry. I don't know what I did with my formula. It's not showing up here. I need Kate to help me again with that, so.
Just looking at Jim's numbers here, if I can just point out something here real quick. So that the number that I know I've heard that before, if you had a full road with gutters and everything was constructed correctly at $1 million a mile, use Acorn Hill if it was constructed correctly, that works out. Jump down to Arnold Drive, you get a road that doesn't have the gutters, doesn't have everything, and that value is about $500,000 a mile. So
Right.
That's actually pretty consistent with what exactly Jim's got here.
As the starting point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think the key that Kate, and you're fully aware of that, right, Kate? You've got to decide how much has already been depreciated to tie this all out for the beginning, because we're not starting at every road being done as of today.
Correct, yeah. And perhaps we could use that pavement condition index, like,
Right.
to say, if it's in, anywhere from 100 to 90%, then we're going to give it its full useful life, 50 years, but then block it as we go down. So 80 to 70 is 40 useful life. And just I think being consistent and having something very clear that tells the auditors where we came up with these numbers is really what we need, because what they want to know is that we thought about these and that we didn't just throw a pin at the wall and call it $1 million.
Well,
So if we can show them we thought about it and this is where we came up with it, that's going to satisfy and give us a point where we can now have this in Encode and every year depreciate it, calculate it in the system, not even us, in the system, and go forward.
And I'm even guessing that we know what were the roads we worked on in the last 5 years. Those have a longer useful life than the ones we worked in the last 10. Those have a longer one on the ones we've never worked on. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we could even maybe make 3 buckets, 4 buckets, and establish those beginning remaining lives using something like that. So that's the methodology that is still to be done, but it's probably more of a maybe accounting thinks about how to do it, and then we ask Jim to fill in, hey, which is the 5-year ones, the ones we've worked in the last 5, because he would maybe know more than we would, which are the 10, 15, and 20, something like that. Because I certainly don't think that it's up, Jim and Terry would understand the accounting. I mean, they do understand the accounting stuff, but I think it's more like
Yeah, man.
presented to you.
Well, right, we have to work together. There's pieces
We're not stupid.
I know.
Right, there's things we know about accounting and the way the system works, and there are other things Jim knows about the road that, so I think we just have to work together, and that if I agree. And if you guys want to give us some guidance to say, how many buckets, or do you want us to come up with something and come back and say, this is what we've come up with, build off of this next month and say, okay, here's what we've come up with based on the discussion, and get feedback again.
That sounds easier, doesn't it, Jim?
Yeah, and I got, as I said, there are some other things I can show that I don't have on here that's part of the program, to Kate's point of surface treatment, reconstruction, there's different categories that can be chose to give you a longer useful life of each road. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
Every year when you make out that 284 and we pick 5 or 6 roads that are going to be upgraded or repaired or maintained, the money we spend doing that, does that go back into that asset value then and increase its asset value? I mean, you're depreciating an original road, but
That's
after
like, that's
10
an
years,
improvement, Terry. That would be like
It's
a building
maintenance.
improvement. So,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Terry.
I mean, this is a real bag of snakes, you know?
Again, that goes back to what Linda said, I'm not up on how the audit stuff works, so we'll come back with information of value and a
Well-
cost or useful life today, and then talk with Kate and Doug how we put that in the end code for the future.
so that.
Well, what I heard was that Linda was saying that maybe it'd be a good idea to let Kate and who the people that are crunching the numbers come up with some recommendations, and then we can sit down and pick it apart. You know, I'm not, you know, not in a negative way, but I mean, you know,
You
say,
maybe,
well, yeah,
yeah,
that should work, you know, so, but you know, things like that, when you have such variability in what treatment the road is going to get in the future, you know, we chip seal them every 5 years. You know, some roads get replaced, you know, stripped right down and rebuilt. I mean, it's really complex trying to factor all those in to say today the asset value of our roads is XYZ. I mean, it's really, I mean, we could come up with a method. We're going to follow this method. And if the auditors like it, we just do it. Then on the other side, when a road needs some work, we go do the work on the road.
yes, exactly. This accounting will never impact what you guys are deciding about the condition and when to fix it. This is really gonna once we get it established, it's gonna roll itself forward. It's gonna take into account those new improvements, whether it be chip sealing and give it a small useful life, or a rebuild and give it a long useful life. And so this is more because we don't have the system rolling,
Right,
that we're having
yeah.
a painful process.
Yeah.
I
There's a
think
nice-
I think what Kate should do is come up with a methodology again and go back to the auditors, maybe even sit down with them to come up with that methodology and then come back to this group. Because if she comes up with a methodology on her own and doesn't get an opinion from them, we could be here at 50 meetings and keep picking this thing apart and not know, and not know if what we're talking about
Right.
is going to be acceptable.
Well, I think that's what, that's what I'm sending in this chat box here are the recommended by the state methods of valuing an asset that has historically been created. So giving it a value once and they've laid out 3 options for us. So we don't have the direct cost option because we don't know what was spent to make the roads. So the other 2 options are the standard costing and the back trending option. And I think what we're leaning toward is the back trending option, where we deflate the current cost of the asset using a price index. And that's, I saw Kathy sent the DOT value. We could use that price index, or we could use the Cornell local roads, the current price index. And I think as long as we make a standard policy, it's going to be accepted because we are already following the guidelines that the state has laid out for us.
Right, but I think what Joe's point is, because we're like tricky in that we've already got one opinion that says our assets aren't able to be determined. He was just suggesting that when we get to where we're close, or where we think we've got all the elements, which are, we're kind of using a standard cost to determine the beginning value, and then we're going to use some sort of methodology to get to the appropriate backwards look. So once we get there, we should run it by them before we do all the work of entering it, and that will help us get a clean audit report, which is the goal.
Right.
So I just running it by them once you get it, say, hey, here's what we did. We calculated what every road is worth if it were brand new today, and then we calculated how depreciated we think it is. And we use these elements to put in there. We didn't put any labor in there, make sure that they are okay on that one. And then just, I think that would be a simple step, even if we had to pay them for an hour of their time to listen to us. It would be well worthwhile so that we
Worth
don't
it.
have to redo it later.
So we did go through this year, we went through the change with the auditors of having changed our asset values based on Encode and getting stuff in Encode. And the piece that they were looking for was the policy from the town board. So I would say maybe that can be a piece of what we do in coming up with these values, is actually have the town board make a formal declaration of this being the direction that we're choosing, and incorporating that perhaps in the fixed asset policy or in some other way. Because so everything else in Encode was transitioned from 2018 to 2019. And we had some calculations we had to do, and with the auditors working through it for 19, they just wanted to see the policy and the consistency. So I think as long as we can check those boxes, I agree. I think going back to them and saying, this is what we're doing, here's a policy that backs it up. I don't see any reason why they would not be moving forward with us.
Okay.
Yeah, and just so everybody's aware, they're willing to give us assistance outside of an audit. So we're not in an audit window right now. So they're willing to do that, and they'll actually use one of the other people. A lot of times they'll send somebody else who actually doesn't do our audit to help us with that sort of thing. So we can certainly do that. And then once we get into the audit, then it's the audit. So.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, I think this is going to be really important for our bonding. I mean, we've got the big water bond coming up and potentially money for parks. So it's really, I think it's key that we're on a path. Obviously, that opinion won't be gone by then because we won't have next year's audit done. But they may.
Doug, you asked me earlier what Encode had as a value for infrastructure. Our current infrastructure value is $13,075,000, and that does not include the roads. So I think if we're looking at about what 43 million for the roads, you add it to the 13 million that we have, which is pretty much water districts right now is what's in there. I think we're really right. We're right in the ballpark with the 52. I think we're going to be over, but I think it's because we have better numbers.
Well, in the original 52-ish probably was before the highway building, right? So that would be some of it also.
Well, buildings are separate from infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
They're still in the policy. That's not in the combined value though, right? But they're still listed in there. Like for instance, Kate, so in our fixed asset policy, for instance, the town hall is in the inventory and it has a value associated with it.
Yes.
It's just a different category.
It's
If
in buildings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we were to look at everything all combined, the number would even be higher.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what is in that 13 million, Kate?
Let me pull it up directly and I can tell you exactly what they are. So the 13 million is the majority is our sewer district is at just over 1 million. And then we have our water districts. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 water districts that we've carried over from previous spreadsheets. So those are what make up the 13 million.
Okay.
And then the roads are listed, they're just listed at a zero value.
Wow.
So do we feel like we have what we need in the system already for water and that would stand up to the audit?
That's a great question, Linda. So
I
it's,
think you know the answer, Linda.
And I just wanted to ask the question and not make an assumption.
yeah, yeah. So we've carried over some numbers. I think we have some good numbers for at least the consolidated district, because we're pretty sure what the value, we have the actual historical cost of upgrades for those in our system. But, you know, for the sewer, would that be worth looking at? We don't include our lighting districts. Is that something we should include? Do we need to look at? It brings up a lot of questions. There's certainly a lot of place to get in the weeds with fixed assets.
Yeah. Huh. How many, Jim, do you know how, we know how many miles of roads we had? Do we know how many miles of water pipe we have in the ground and
Somewhere in a range of 90.
90 miles?
Yeah.
Wow.
It would seem like Greg Hotelling would have specifics with that mapping software that they have, right?
Yeah, we have the same software.
Oh, we have that,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, good, good. So that would give it to us.
Yeah, but, you know, water main doesn't run straight, it runs all over gas creations.
Yeah.
So,
Now, do we have to go through a similar exercise with that? Because, I mean, I don't know where that what 11 or 12 million dollars that Kate talked about, that's the value currently assigned to it, but how accurate is that?
Well, it's a depreciated value. So you would do the same thing that we are doing here, which you would establish like, all right, 12-inch main is this, 8-inch main is that.
Yeah.
And then you'd say the rest of it has already gone to depreciation, is my assumption. Or the life of this is, we still have this much left based on accounting, but not on, it's the tricky part is it's not necessarily based on how long we're going to use it. Some of these things will fully depreciate and we'll use them until they
Yeah,
buck.
right. Like the roads, yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, we'll be adding 7 million roughly to that next year when the
Yep.
the project is complete. So that number is going to jump up too.
And that'll have a useful life, and every year,
Yeah.
some amount of it will go into depreciation.
So like the sewer district, my concern is like the older stuff, like the sewer district that was constructed in 2014. I want to say it was $1.5 million. So if it's currently got $1 million value, I mean, that's probably pretty realistic. That was probably the depreciated value of it. But you get some of this older stuff that's been kicking around. Who knows if that value is correct on it or not?
Yeah.
And for accounting, it only needs to be done in a methodical way, I would say. You know, and that's pretty much where Kate's been talking us through it, is that we need to just have a method and be using the method consistently. And so, and for it to make some sense that we, at the beginning of when we put it in, we thought it would last 40 years. Yep, it's lasted 60. That's great. But we fully depreciated it 20 years ago.
So is what's been done with water and sewer then acceptable? I mean, we don't have to
We have
develop
to.
another policy for that also, or do we?
That's a question for Kate. What do you think, Kate? Are we at the point where we need to be with the sewer stuff and the water stuff, or does it need to be lined up like this road stuff?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I would say what we have is an estimate, and I would send the question back to the board to say, what do you want to see? Are you comfortable with the estimates that we have currently? Or since we're doing this, do you want us to look at it in more depth and verify those values?
If we're putting it into the system for the first time, I'd rather it be put in a way that we can all stand behind rather than using Fox's crazy methodology. But you know, I don't know that it's the same as the roads because, like you say, Jim, it goes everywhere. So it's not like we want to specifically identify every inch of pipe. We might want to have categories of pipe that we.
So it's currently categorized by the water district. So like this SW 500 district has a value, and then the Emerson Road district has a value. So it's not, we don't have to get into the specifics of the miles of pipe and the quality like we are here with the roads. we
Yeah.
can look at it at a wider lens. But I think the mile of road should be calculated in the value of the district.
It would seem like it.
Does was the starting point for those numbers, it's, the cost when they were installed, or?
Correct. That's
Or
from
do-
what I
okay.
can see in Bob's spreadsheet. It's each year we did an improvement. He put that amount of the improvement into that water district.
Okay, so that's I don't know, I'm not an accountant, but it seems to me that would be an acceptable, method to, have been following and continue to follow.
Being that it was only the improvements that were done when EFPR was working with us, we
Yeah.
do have 1 or 2 districts that are completely depreciated. And is that accurate to say that a district that has water lines that are operating is fully depreciated? And
Well,
so
from
again, I
a,
would pose
yeah.
it back to the board.
from an accounting standpoint, yeah, but from a life standpoint, it's like the roads. I mean, we're gonna continue to use them whether they're fully depreciated or not.
Right. Like the districts you guys consolidated into water last year, Adams Road, they paid off their debt in their time frame of their bond. Maybe it is appropriate that it be fully depreciated because they paid it off and that useful life
think-
has been exceeded.
The useful life of these things are usually established by, somebody else. So it'll usually say for sewer, it's between blank and blank. You know what I mean? They give you numbers. So
Yeah.
so long as we know that it's past the number of the useful life, that we actually did that improve. Say they say sewer should be depreciated over 20 years. And we know we put this in over 20 years ago, it is fully depreciated. We could assume
Right.
that. And it has no bearing on whether we're still using it or not. It's just, is it depreciated? Now,
Right.
in the meanwhile, in the 20 years, if we did improvements to it, how we would do it today is we would list them. So it
Yeah.
could be that there were some improvements that we didn't capture. But, that's part of the trickiness of establishing that beginning balance in the system.
Yeah, and the direction from you guys, I think is going to be the biggest piece is where we're going to get that uniform list of useful life. And if we can get that from the state comptroller's office and the board can adopt that as part of the policy to say this is where we're pulling it from, that'll give us that consistency.
Yeah, I assume that the state comptroller has ranges for categories of asset lives because that's pretty much I was an accountant a long time ago, but that was pretty standard. Joe, what do you know about this?
I think there's accounting standards that have
Ranges.
useful lives, because I know when we were at the college, if we put something on our assets, the auditors said, here's the useful life for this type of asset. So I think there's just a general standard. It doesn't matter if you get them from Bonadillo, if you get them from the controller's office,
Whatever.
you're going to get the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Just like office furniture is 5 to 7. You know what I mean? They have those ranges.
Yeah.
Just buildings are 20. I still remember the old ranges.
It's
but-
accounting standards that determine the useful lives. That's why you can't play games with that with your roads, saying, okay, like I think we have 5 years left on our road. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to go back to when it was built and say this road was built 20 years ago. A road has a useful life of 30 years. There's 10 years left on it.
Right, but when we lack the historical records to be able to do that, then the idea is that the suggestion is to provide an estimate. So,
Okay, right. I didn't realize that. I missed the part where we didn't have the records.
Well, a
for
lot
that.
of the water districts were established in a certain year, and so you can use that as part of it. If they give us a useful life number of years, and we know when the water district was established, we can use those as very good benchmarks to help us.
I think we'll have much better records for the water districts than we will for the roads.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like bucketizing the roads into, do you think they've been touched in the last 5? Do you think, you know what I mean? Do you think, or will they, you can kind of try to establish it that way using something consistent.
again, I think we just let Kate go back and maybe work with, I don't know if she works with Doug on this, or if she works with the auditors, come back with a methodology, run it by them, and then come back to us. Otherwise, we're gonna be here all day going over this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a matter of getting us all onto the same page today. And one of the reasons why we had established the second meeting of the month was so we could go deep into something if it needed it. This needed so many different people to look at it and to figure out. And I think, I just want to say one thing though, Kate, when you say whatever the town board wants me to do, as we feel like we're so not the expert, even with my limited accounting from a million years ago, that what we really want to do is try to bulletproof it in the way that Joe suggests, by either talking with controller's office on our method, taking them through a little bit of the detail so that they can point at anything that's going to hold us up later, and then hope for the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And my piece is just that what I'm saying is I would want the board to formalize it.
Yeah.
Whatever
I need a
decision would
resolution.
be, we'd
Right.
formalize it.
Yeah, so if you make a policy that says, you draft the policy and it says, hey, we're going to use these useful lives, we're going to have used this methodology. Yeah, that's exactly, we
Yeah.
recognize what we did and what
Yep.
we're doing forward. Perfect. All right. Anything else we want to talk about on this topic?
Nope, we've talked quite a bit on it.
Okay. So one of the things I was thinking of too was talking about, because this has a possibility of impacting our bond rating, and the bond rating is important relative.
And it may be as simple as, printing out a report and let's see, we're declaring these values as the starting point. Run that by everybody and make.
I think we're losing Doug a little.
Yeah, Doug? Did we lose him?
No,
completely?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry. We heard it, what you said, sort of. Could you say it again?
Oh, what I was just saying, it may be as simple as, after we get the methodology figured out, and we can certainly run that by everybody, it may be as simple as having the town board, we print out a report and say, here's what the values are, and having the town board adopt a resolution declaring those values, just so, again, we have a record of the town board took action based on this, is declaring that this, and then that way we've got a starting point for the auditors.
Yeah, the thing that would need to be in there would be the way we establish it, based on using the standard for today and the use, how long ago, or whatever, however we're doing it, but it should describe our methodology, or else it's just being plucked out of thin air.
So,
So that can work. All right. I don't know, I guess I feel like we're probably going on the right path. Do we think that by next month we might have some feedback have some feedback on the methodology? Is that possible? It's like a month from now, and I know there's a lot of other things going on.
Yeah, I think barring unforeseen circumstances, it's certainly, a few weeks is certainly enough time for us to work together. Would you agree, Jim, to get together and go over this?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll see, we'll touch base with you, Kate, at the normal meeting, and then we'll see if we need to have a second meeting to walk people through the methodology so that they understand what they're going to sign during a resolution.
Yeah, that sounds great. That works. I was just looking at the calendar. Our third meeting is the week of the town board, so it'd be right after you guys met. So that sounds good.
It might be good for the second Thursday, shoot for December 10th, to go through this one more time. That way, if we need to make any changes to anything, we still have a little bit of time to prepare for the agenda going out for that next week.
Okay.
So the third Thursday would actually be when we actually review the agenda, because the meeting is actually the 21st. It's just a little later this month.
All right, and then the other thing is, if that doesn't work, we might still be able to do it in January, because we'd still have the year open. But it would be better to do it in December. Right?
sounds good.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I just want, since we do have several board members here, given the situation we have in town hall, Monday evening, we adopted that policy for, how we're going to handle people that are diagnosed with the virus. I think somehow we need to communicate that to the whole staff, let everybody know, here's what we're going to do. If you come down with it, here's the procedure. Is that being given to people? Is that going to be incorporated in the handbook?
Yeah, so Terry, we're working on that. We actually have a meeting, Zoom meeting, it looks like now at noon. It was just scheduled while we were meeting, all of us, so that we can talk about that. Sam has actually developed yesterday the form that needs to be filled out. So now that we can, and
Okay.
that was actually shared. I think, Sam, you started sharing that with employees yesterday, right? But we're going to go through that today and everything. And I've talked to almost all the town hall employees, and then I've got to, Jim, you and I have got to talk to see how we notify all the highway and water guys. But it's in process. It's in process.
Okay, good. I should have known.
I have a question regarding the December finance meetings. Are they the 10th and the 17th or the 17th and the 24th?
They're the second and third Thursdays of the month.
All right, so we're good. Okay, very good. I just want to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know which dates those are, and that's how I answer. Yeah.
No, it's the 10th and the
10th
17th.
and 17th.
So on this, are you canceling your December 10th meeting or are
No,
you?
that's the meeting we're thinking of working on, reviewing this again.
On the 10th?
Correct.
Okay. All
And-
right. I just needed to know if I needed to get a press release out, so.
Yeah, we're planning to just make sure that we nail this one down if we can.
All right.
So,
And we are still adopting a needy family, so sent out an email yesterday afternoon. Hopefully everybody got it. If not, let me know. And then just, if you wanna, just let me know which things you are interested in. You can send me an email or give me a call or a text message or whatever, so.
Okay.
It looked like there were duplicates on there. Are there two girls who are?
No,
teenagers?
no, well, I did, originally they only gave me 3 gifts per kid. So I doubled it to get, so each kid could possibly get 6 gifts. So that's
Okay.
good. We generally do that. We usually double it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I was looking at it really early, like at 1 o'clock this morning, but the list is actually out on the email? Because I see.
I attached it, yes, I
Okay.
attached. Yep.
Oh, I'll look for it better then.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Enjoy Florida.
I'm gonna try. All right,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.